Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for the December session of our AI Apps and Agents Dev Days series. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our presenters for today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining. This is the third episode of our AI Apps and Agents Dev Day series, and we are super excited to show you lots of great stuff about AI scaling and agents and orchestration. Now, my name is Stephen McCullough, and I'm an AI solutions architect with NVIDIA. So I work very closely with Microsoft on integrating all of the latest technology between Microsoft and NVIDIA directly into Azure. And I'm joined here today with Gwen.
Hey, Stephen, and hey, everyone else. Welcome to this series. My first time here. Thanks so much for the invite, Stephen. It's been awesome working together. My name is Gwen. I'm on our Python advocacy team, and yeah, excited to show you a bunch of cool agent stuff.
Yes, awesome. Lots of great agent stuff to show today. Really, just no shortage of great things going on in this world. So a bit about the program before we jump in. The partnership between Microsoft and NVIDIA is a very deep one, very long-lasting. And really, this webinar series is a big part of this partnership. We want to show developers and users like you how you can really leverage the latest and greatest technology coming out of this partnership. So make sure that you tune in to the rest of this series so you can learn how you can best leverage all of this great technology. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and jump on in. So today, it's all going to be about scaling and orchestrating your AI agents. So we're going to start off with a quick touch point about AI agents, what they are, how they work, how you can create your AI agents. Then we're going to dive into Microsoft Agent Framework. And this is really a great tool that helps you orchestrate and build multi-agent frameworks that can scale and can orchestrate across hundreds of agents and can help you achieve very complex tasks completely automatically. Then we'll dive into NVIDIA AI blueprints, which are, you can think of them like recipes for complex multi-agent workflows. I'll show an example of one of our AI blueprints. Then we'll go into a couple demos showing how you can integrate your agentic workflows into your application and how you can use it for batch processing for asynchronous workflows. So lots of great stuff to jump into today. I'm just going to go right into AI agents. So quick review. What exactly is an AI agent and how does it differ from an LLM? Well, an agent has a couple different capabilities on top of sort of the basic LLM. The first is that it has reasoning and tool calling capabilities. So not every LLM can be an agent, but if it does have that reasoning and tool calling capability, then it can be used as an agent. On top of that, we also introduce long-term and short-term memory capabilities. So if you're familiar with something with tools like LangChain or Microsoft Agent Framework that help introduce that memory aspect into these LLMs, that's a big part of what makes an LLM an agent. So whenever you introduce these capabilities to your LLM and you sort of encapsulate it into an agent, you open up a huge world of possibilities, because not only does it become more intelligent with this reasoning capability, but it can also interact with the outside world. So example, if I want to create an agent that is my content creator for, let's say, LinkedIn, I can give it an API tool to where it can create some content on LinkedIn, maybe a paragraph or an announcement, and it can automatically call this tool to post onto my LinkedIn page, for example. So that's just one sort of possibility that this agent can do. But once you introduce it to tools that you create with your own code, the world, is your oyster in that case. You can really do just about anything you put your mind to with your agents. So these are very powerful tools that you can use for pretty much any complex task. So whenever we think about agentic workflows, how does that work? Why do we even need an agentic workflow if our agent can already reason, it's already intelligent, and it can already call tools and interact with the outside world? Why do we need to introduce these workflows into our systems and into our company? Well, the key word here is specialization. There isn't a single AI model out there that is the best at everything. Some AI models like Nemotron Parse are specialized for document analysis. Some models like GPT-5 are powerful for coding and chat, and some models are great for audio processing. Now, if you get into fine-tuning models, then you can get even more specialized. You could take your model that's great at chat and document analysis and fine-tune it for, let's say, the financial sector, or fine-tune it for healthcare. So you can get even more specialized models. And it's really that the idea that multiple specialized models will beat one generalized intelligent model that introduces the need for agentic workflows. So for example, let's think about an AI system where you might like a doctor might bring a device into a diagnosis room where they're meeting with a patient, and that device might listen to the whole conversation going on between the doctor and patient. And in the background, this AI agent workflow is, number one, transcribing the audio into text. Number two is researching everything it's learning, and it's creating a sort of diagnosis suggestion for the doctor based off of what the patient is saying. And number three, it's creating the appropriate plans for the patient to follow, depending on their diagnosis. So in that system, there isn't really one model that can do all of those things, just the absolute best, right? We probably want to have fine-tuned models, specialized models that are focused on each one of those areas: the transcription from voice to text, the research into medical history and other past medical diagnoses, and three, looking into the patient's past research history, and then four, creating a action plan for the patient. So that's an example where you might see an agentic workflow, but there are almost endless use cases where you can apply this methodology. And we'll be going over that today. So I'll hand it over to Gwen to talk more about how you can actually build these workflows yourself and customize them and deploy them using Microsoft Agent Framework. So over to you, Gwen.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, let's talk about Microsoft Agent Framework. For context, you might have used something like AutoGen or Semantic Kernel before, which are frameworks that Microsoft has created in the past. Agent Framework is sort of the journey moving forward. So if you're building something new, it's what we recommend you leverage. But to take a step back and kind of discuss why you would want to build agents in code in the first place, as developers, you already have many reasons, most likely. Like you, as an example, you probably know Python. That means building something else, but with Python, you already have some similarities there, right? You know, you can leverage different SDKs, different tools, different data sources. You can make them as custom and as full in control as you like. And that just comes with the flexibility of programming something, right? Additionally, you can create these things locally. You can leverage local models. You can leverage tools that you would leverage your day-to-day development journey, right? And then you can have them in your CI/CD pipelines, all these types of things that we've known from this development journey. And portability. If we leverage a framework, we're using code, we can deploy to one cloud if we want to try it to a different cloud, if we want to have it deployed locally on a container or on some random computer that you have sitting around, you can do that as well, right? So those are awesome advantages as to why we want to use code to create these agents. But that doesn't mean you're limited to only using code, right? You have sort of the same abstractions that we have when we think of cloud infrastructure, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, FaaS, container as a service, so many options. We see that same pattern happening with these agent developments, Gen AI apps, and things like that, right? So with IaaS, same way that you think about with cloud infrastructure, you bring your own containers and frameworks, and you are more in control of the infra, but that also means that you are in control of the maintenance and all that kinds of things, right? In this case, you'd have like open source LLMs and frameworks and things like that you could leverage. For PaaS, so platform as a service, we have things like Foundry now that have an agent service there as well. And then SaaS, traditionally you could think of something like Logic Apps or all your software as a service type things. We have actually Copilot Studio that allows you to create agents without code, which I think is pretty awesome. So there are options for everyone. But for today, we want to focus on code and Microsoft Agent Framework, right? And I will move over here. Microsoft Agent Framework is in preview. We do have a lot of changes happening, so do keep that in mind. But it is something very, very fun to build with, and expect it to be GA sometime in the new year, early in the new year. Keep that in mind. But it is the open source engine for building and orchestrating intelligent AI agents. We do have integrations with things like OpenTelemetry, which are gold standard when it comes to observability. You have all the benefits that you get from using the Azure AI platform, guardrails, security, evaluations, all that types of things. Integrations into Entra ID and all of those things. And yeah, very cool product. Check it out. So for orchestrating multi-agents, we have a couple of workflows. And I'm actually going to load this here. Oh, let's go back. My animations are somewhat slow here. Anyway, we have multiple workflows, and these aren't specific to Microsoft Agent Framework. I think you will see the sort of same set of workflows across various frameworks that are meant to be used to build agents. And they might just have different names, but the patterns themselves are quite similar. The most easiest, and if you haven't built anything before, I recommend you start with the sequential, is you really just have one agent do a task, then the next agent does the task, then the next agent does the task, and then you end with some result, right? Sequential. With concurrent, you kick off something, but you have various agents working at the same time, right? And this is ideal for when you have work that isn't necessarily dependent of each other, right? So they can all do their own things, and then you save on like processing time, right? Handoff, this would be ideal for something like a customer support experience. So the customer sends some kind of message, and then the first agent, its goal is to triage, right? So then it understands like, okay, this is like a tech support. a request, then it will go and hand that off to the tech support agent. Or maybe it's a refund request, so then it'll go and hand it off to whichever is the right agent for that workflow. And then they just, hand off the work until they complete. Right. Now, those three, I feel like cover a good amount of sort of getting started and actually quite complete workflows and examples and things that you most likely would want to build. But if you need a little bit more planning, a little bit more management, I would say the group chat and the Agentic ones are the way to go. Group chat is, you can think of it as like a writer's room. Like we have someone who pitches an idea or is looking for feedback on something. And then you have a bunch of other agents that can either provide feedback, provide iterations, edits, and things like that. And then it comes back to the reviewer. And then it's sort of like a collaborative back and forth. And the goal is to get to the result. And you will define at the beginning which type of pattern you want to use for this specific group chat. There's like round robin. There's a couple of other options there. And it's great for when you are not 100% sure on it should be sequential or things like that. I'll actually show you an example in a little bit of this one. And then Agentic, I like to think of it as like a souped up version of group chat, because the goal of the Agentic workflow is to plan ahead of time. So you give it some kind of task, it will turn it into subtasks and then outline a plan for, okay, I'm going to give this subtask, this agent, this subtask to this agent. But the reason there's a little document on this workflow here is because it keeps updates on the progress. If any of the agents are not working, anything that is sort of relevant to the execution of this work, it'll keep track of that. And then if for some reason something doesn't work, it goes back into planning mode. It's quite flexible, quite robust to figure out, okay, how do we get to the end result that we need to? And you can envision that that's going to take more resources, more time, but more robust. So for specific workflows, that would be ideal, right? And then the ultimate complexity, workflow process, which is essentially taking all of these workflows and turning them into agents themselves. So each one of these little items could be like a sequential or a concurrent or a handoff, and then they are all interacting that way, right? It's workflow exception. But many options. Again, if you haven't worked with any of these types before, I recommend starting with at least the first two and going from there. Now, on top of having all of these workflow options, and like I mentioned before with Entra ID and things like that, you can also plug in a lot of different tools and make your workflows quite extensive, right? You have like MCP servers, we have like Cosmos DB, SQL Server, LangChain, and many more coming. So it's not just about creating agents that can interact with LLMs. It's about creating agents that can interact with LLMs and are also grounded and sort of powered by different data sources, different tools, different inputs that will come from all of these tools and extensions, right? And the other sort of key part to make agents work well is having some kind of memory tool or mechanism. In Agent Framework, we have something called Agent Thread. So we can just kind of work through this example here. So let's say I have a travel planning application. I have a user that says, I need to book a hotel in New York for 2 stays, right? And then the agent will go and use the TripAdvisor API, search for the nearest hotel, creates the message, and then sends it back there, right? And then I ask another question. Again, let's kind of think of these threads as like chats. Like when you're inside like a chatbot, you have like one chat thread, right? And then I'm asking another question here, which is what's the daily meal allowance for the business trip? And then again, the agent goes, in this time, it goes to Microsoft SharePoint, queries the company travel policy, creates a message, and then sends a message back, right? So the thread itself has the sort of in-context memory here of what is going on, because the next time I send a message in the same thread, it would be helpful to have all of this sort of relevant information that we've worked on before, right? But on top of that, when I create another thread, right, maybe it's a different day, a slightly different topic, whatever it is, or maybe I need to book, I don't know, I want to know about transportation options or something like that. We also have the memory mechanism, which this keeps track of important things of all across all your threads for a specific user, right? That way, your user's not always starting from zero, right? It depends on what you want, like short term, right? Short term, you would keep in mind these threads. And like long term, you would keep in mind these memory options. And for that, you would need a database, of course. You wouldn't want to be storing that in something like, I don't know, JSON file or anything like that. Now, I had mentioned a little bit about us having options for observability with OpenTelemetry. And then if you're familiar already with the Azure platform, you've most likely seen that you can get very, very rich insights in application insights, Azure Monitor, right? You can see traces, you can see logs, you can use Custo to query for all of those things. And we also have content policies, human in the loop sort of approval flows, things like that. And you can also, we also support long running things. I'm actually running something right now that I started like half an hour ago. And so I'll show you, hopefully it's done by the time we have some demos at the end. And yeah, we have policy enforcement thanks to, we have Entra ID, we have content filters. Yeah, bunch of amazing stuff that comes thanks to leveraging the Foundry platform for building these things. And before we move on to this, I do just want to show you an example of what like a really simple workflow would look like. So I think sometimes people think like, oh, agents, building agents can be quite complex and things like that. But I'm just going to show you here. So this is something we call DevUI. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So this is something we call DevUI. And move this over here. And just because I get asked this a lot, yes, you can switch it to dark mode if you want to. But anyway, so here, what I'm going to do is just run this, right? And I'm going to put in a message here. Tomorrow, I am free. All right, I'm just going to send this over. So what we have here is a workflow that we can actually see it execute one by one, and we'll see what decisions it actually makes along the way. Its goal is to grab some kind of input and translate it to Spanish, right? But the reason why I tried to make it somewhat of a vague English text is because the goal here is for between the reviewer and the editor and the final input and then the re-reviewer, it can only sort of give us a final input if we have above 95% accuracy. But this one, it is giving us, let me see. It gave us, and honestly, okay, that's actually a good one. I'm trying to get it to get, these models are getting quite good at translating to Spanish. Let's see. This is let me do some grammar issues on Microsoft Agent Framework. I'm trying to get it to trigger that re-reviewer here. But you can start to kind of visually easily see here how it works, right? And then we also have the events here on the right side so we can see what happened step by step. And we also obviously have it in here as well. And yeah, I'm really trying to get it to, no, it keeps, here we go. No, it went straight to the final output. All right. You get the point here is you can have the option where you sort of get things to work depending on specific conditions. And if we look at the code here, let's go on here. So it is this single file. There's a bunch of meat and potatoes, but the most important thing is if we go to the bottom here, we can take a look at our actual workflow here, which is defined in this code. I'm going to make this just a little larger. Go here. There we go. So we have a workflow builder. The goal is to start with, your executor, right? Which in this case is just our translator. And then we have an at edge, right? Because here, each one of these are sort of considered, when you branch out, you consider that an edge. So we'll go back here and then we'll say at edge the translator, which will send off to the reviewer. And then here it tells us here, if the high quality, go to output, else you go to the editor, which we have here, a switch case edge group. So again, depending if we hit above that percentage of quality, which again is subjective because we're giving these to LLMs, but you get the point, right? And then after editing, re-review. And if it is high quality, we go to the output. If not, we'll just go back to editor until we get a good a good one. I'm going to try once more to see if I can get it to fail here.
The model is just too smart.
Yeah, the GPT models are fantastic with Spanish. Maybe I should have picked a different one. Let me just say, what is you? Let's do something like that. Let's do like some very incorrect English. Yeah, I've worked ever since like GPT-3 with like a lot of translation, because I work a lot with like developers that speak Spanish, and ever since like, yeah, probably 4.1, it's just been one of the best models for working with other languages. So yeah, pretty interesting. All right, let's see. It is
Gwen, there's
editing.
a question. How can we use and install DevUI? And is it Python only?
Yeah, that's a great question. So framework, Azure Framework works with, we have C# and Python support now. And it really is just installing. I'll show you in a second here. But we did get it to run. We see it's going on run too. But it really is just using, we'll go over here, project.toml. And here we're using Agent Framework and then Agent Framework DevUI, right? You don't necessarily have to use DevUI, but it's a great way to sort of have that visual representation of what's going on. And then the actual configuration of it is just down here. Nothing too crazy, just this line here, sure. Right. And we'll drop some links, documentations for you to go and review that, but it's it's pretty neat tool. Now we'll go back here. Yes, so here, okay, cool. Now you see translating the text. The accuracy was 90%, so it needs improvement because it's below 95. Then it goes back, and then it ended, and so I said, what is you? I guess I was trying to say, who are you? So it does get the correct translation in Spanish. Yeah. So anyway, that was a nice little DevUI plus Agent Framework example there. Do you want to talk about NVIDIA AI blueprints now?
Absolutely. Let's do it. All right. So yeah, like Gwen showed, there's so much capability and so much flexibility when you build your agent workflow. But admittedly, it can be a bit tricky to know how to get started. Maybe you need some reference architectures, or at least some ways to help you get on your feet and start building your workflows for your company. So that's really where NVIDIA AI blueprints come in. And you can think of AI blueprints as like reference workflows, and that can be pre-trained and customized for specific use cases. So if you go on build.nvidia.com and go to /blueprints, you can see all of our blueprints shown here. And there's just so many different kinds of reference architectures and recipes that you can use. So we have a multi-LLM NIM blueprint. We have a blueprint for creating a data flywheel. We have a blueprint for creating an AI retail shopping assistant. And all of these are available on the NVIDIA AI Blueprints GitHub repo. So you can go here and find the code for all of these different blueprints. So it's all, completely visible to you. You can come in here, download the code, and deploy these blueprints yourself. Only requirement is that you would have an NGC account. NGC is NVIDIA GPU Cloud. You would just create an account, create an API key, and plug it in, and then you're ready to go. So it's a great way to get started. And the way that that the blueprints work is that we have 3 foundational blueprints. So we have AIQ, Agentic AI blueprint. We have the RAG blueprint, and we have a data flywheel blueprint. So these are sort of the 3 foundational workflows that we build everything else upon. So you can see, if we go back to build, that each one of these is sort of built on one of these 3 foundational workflows. So AI observability for the data flywheel. Of course, that's the data flywheel foundational blueprint. The streaming data to RAG, that's the blueprint for RAG foundational blueprint. So all of these are sort of built on these foundational blueprints and customized for individual use cases. So this is a great way to understand how you can build these agentic workflows for your own use case. And we try to really make these as approachable and as applicable as possible to as many real world use cases as possible. So there's a high likelihood that whatever orchestration, agentic workflow you're trying to orchestrate, there's already a reference architecture for it or for something very similar on NVIDIA's Blueprints website. So I strongly encourage you to go check it out and see what you can build. Now, let's see. So one of the blueprints that I'll be showing you today is the financial model distillation blueprint. So what this does is it distills or it fine-tunes a smaller model that's about 1 billion parameters, and it fine-tunes it using financial data. And whenever you are doing model distillation, you are essentially using a larger model to train or to fine-tune a smaller model. So what we're doing here is we're using the larger models like Llama 3.1 8B, Llama Nemotron 49B, and using those larger models to fine-tune the smaller model. So this is, of course, using financial data and financial modeling, things like stock price information, financial news, to fine-tune the smaller model. But this reference architecture can be used for multiple different kinds of data. You can use healthcare data, you can use, let's say, sports data, and you can use the same architecture. And again, all of the code to run this is available on the NVIDIA AI Blueprints GitHub. So if we go here to AI model distillation for financial data, we have our entire Jupyter notebook that is used to create this architecture. So if we deploy this onto a virtual machine, which I'll show you in a second, you can run this entire Jupyter notebook and step by step understand how this model distillation is working. So this is a really, really great way to get your hands dirty, to understand how this workflow is working, and to implement something yourself. So back here, it's important to understand the different components that are going on under the hood in these different workflows. So, of course, we have our vector database, we have our orchestrator, and we have some of our long-term memory data stores here with Nemo. But let's focus on the models and the compute side that's going on here. So these models are based on the NVIDIA Nemotron model family. So Nemotron is a suite of models that includes LLMs, VLMs, and safety models, as well as RAG models. So Nemotron is a family where you can pretty much any model that you're looking for, Nemotron has a model that can use for your use case. So for example, one of the newest announcements in the AI world is that just yesterday, NVIDIA released the Nemotron 3 Nano model, which is a fantastic model that can do agentic work. It can do tool calling and very intelligent reasoning through in just a very small footprint. So it's a highly intelligent model, top of its class, and it was just released yesterday, so it's very brand new. We also have the Nemotron Nano 2 vision learning model, which is great for multimodal workflows. And so whenever you're building these different blueprints, you can plug these different models in where you need them. So if you remember what I was talking about earlier, how we have different specialized models for different use cases, and that's why we need this whole agentic orchestration rather than one intelligent model. This is exactly sort of the answer to that. We have these models for all of these different use cases, and they're all open source, open weight, so very approachable and easy to get up and running. Now, whenever it comes to how we run these models, that's where NVIDIA NIM comes into play. So NVIDIA NIM is really the answer for how can we bring this complex process of serving these models and tuning them and optimizing them for our infrastructure. The answer to that question is running it with NVIDIA NIM, because NVIDIA NIM is, you can think of it like a Docker container with all of this optimization and tuning baked into it that you can run with a simple Docker run command. And all of our NIMs are available on NGC. So if I go to ngc.nvidia.com and I go to the catalog, it will take me to, and I go search for the containers, I can find the NVIDIA NIM section that has all of our NIM models here. So for example, the Llama 3.1 Nemotron Nano VL, that's available here. We have a NIM for GPT-OSS 20B. So we make NIMs not just for Nemotron models, but also for other open source models. So really great way to get up and running and to leverage these microservices very quickly. So now that we understand what's going on under the hood, let's go back to this AI financial distillation workflow. So if I open up the, if I clone the repo and open up the workbook, you can see that it walks me through all of these different steps that take me through the data processing and preparation part of the workflow, as well as how we can create a data flywheel. And if you're not familiar, a data flywheel is essentially a continually running process to sharpen your models using newly incoming data from both your from both the outside world as well as any real user interaction with the model. So this helps cover a lot of these really core ideas that are important to agentic workflow orchestration. So as you can see, it includes all of the code that you need to get up and running. You can really just run it as a Jupyter notebook, and you can also use it to reference whenever you create, let's say, your own workflow. You can plug in the models that you would like to use. So right here, we plug in 3.3 Nemotron Super 49B V1. We could also plug in a different large reasoning model to use here, because this is going to be the teacher model that is sort of larger and teaching the smaller student model about this financial data. So this really walks you through the entire process and helps you get up and running very quickly. Now, we also have the capability to run these blueprints on Brev. So if I go back to, let's see, if I go back to the blueprints and I find that AI model distillation for financial data, I can go view the code on GitHub, but I can also just click and deploy it via Brev. And with Brev, it launches the workflow on a hosted service in the cloud, and I can choose which one I want to host. So this would be Lambda Labs. And I can just deploy the launchable, and it creates this entire blueprint on Brev. So it's another really great way to get up and running. You can test it out less than $10 an hour. Really great way to sort of get accustomed and get your hands dirty with these blueprints. So lots of great stuff going on here with the blueprints, and I highly recommend it as a way to understand and build your learning with these AI workflow orchestration tools. So I'll hand it back to Gwen, and she's going to show you a couple different examples of how we can use these workflows for real world use cases.
Yeah, before we dive into that, I want to grab a couple of questions. There's will the blueprints run on Azure platform or NVIDIA platform?
Yes, so it depends. You can run on the Azure platform. I recommend you check out the AIQ blueprint. You can install it via Helm chart. So you can run it on Kubernetes, which means AKS. And then on the Azure platform, it's not going to be like hosted and serverless where you don't worry about the infrastructure. If you want to run it on Azure, you would run it on something like AKS or an Azure VM. But if you want something more hosted and serverless, that's where you would use something like Brev. So it sort of depends on what you're looking to do there, but short answer is you can run it on both.
Perfect. There's a few more here. Can the blueprints run on NVIDIA's DGX Spark?
So that depends. It depends on the blueprint, because some of these models, like if you want to run a model on the DGX Spark, number one, the model has to be the right size for the DGX Spark, and it has to have the right like software support for the DGX Spark. So if the blueprint is using models that do fit that criteria, then yes, absolutely. But I would verify that the blueprints you're using are using models that have that support.
Awesome. Yeah, we can get through the rest towards the end. I'll try my best to leave time at the end after we go through a couple of these examples. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of things, some integrations, some background running stuff, and then whatever else I can show you. So to start, let's go to we can just look at the code base to start, for example. So we have quite an involved project here. I'll show you. We have, I guess of importance, we have a bunch of agents, right? This is a Python project. We're using Microsoft Azure Framework here. And we have a bunch of agents in here. We have a stock agent, marketing, admin insights. And then these are all using different types of workflows. And on top of that, we also have MCP servers. We have a finance server, and we have a supplier server. As you know, agents work really well with MCPs. So great to have a couple of those as well. And then we just have like some front end, a lot of front end stuff there too. But we can dive more into that in a bit, but we'll stick to kind of looking at this. So I launched the project, and for those who are C# developers, you're most likely familiar with something called Aspire. And now Aspire also has first-class support for Python projects as well, which is why we're using this tool. And it's, in my opinion, one of the best ways to not only get an overview of like where everything is running. For example, my agent dev is running on this URL, my finance MCP is running on here, but we also have quite rich console output here. I just ran a bunch of my like background things, so we'll see a bunch of things coming in here. We also have a more structured login, if that's helpful. This is quite helpful when you want to see like immediate errors versus information at different levels. And we also have traces, which when we're calling LLMs and things like that, quite helpful to be able to see this as well. But this isn't an Aspire talk, but I wanted to show you that. All right, so what we have here actually is just like a shop, right? I'm gonna go and open it up here. We'll open this up, right? So we have this pop-up shop. You can buy a bunch of products, and we have the option to log in either as a customer or as an admin. And I think I have the customer logged in already here. So this is one of the integrations we're using. What's it called? Chat UI Kit by OpenAI, which allows you to create these sort of chat experiences that are powered by LLMs behind them, right? So I am signed in here as a customer. I'll just zoom in here. You can see here, I'm signed in as Stacy, right? And then here you get what you would expect when you sign in to a customer portal, just orders, items, total savings in this case. And then I just opened up the chat and I asked what was my most recent order, and it gives me information on that. If I wanted to do a return, I think this is way out of the return policy. This was this was like 6 months ago, so I'm pretty sure there's no store out there that would let me do a return. But if we wanted to, we would have the option to kick off that type of functionality as well. And we have a couple of other customer ones, but I want to show you our admin site first. So let's go in here. I can log in as a manager. And we have different managers for different stores, different logins, of course. But the first integration that we have here is this weekly insights. This is actually AI generated. And this is specific to the store that you are logging in, right? So when we think of managing a store, managing product, it's important to consider not only like top selling products, but also maybe there's going to be a lot of snow in the following week. So it makes a lot of sense for us to stock up on like winter boots or heavy jackets or things like that, or maybe it's raining, right? So having that quick glance of information here, and I'll show you how this works in a second. We also have those top selling products like I mentioned, and then also local events. I logged into the New York store. So here it's saying several major outdoor events, including a holiday festival and the New Year's Eve celebration. And these expect to drive significant foot traffic and clothing sales in the coming weeks. So these are all things that are important to keep in mind when we try to restock things or, try to make the most out of this, right? Now, let me just show you how that works a little bit before we see the stocking functionality. So we have, I'll start here at the bottom. And I know this looks like a lot, but I promise you don't make a lot of sense. So we'll start here at the bottom. And that is where we define our actual workflow and sort of the process of how things work, right? So we have a data collector, we have a weather analyzer, events analyzer, top selling products analyzer, and insights synthesizer, right? So if we look back here, again, weather analyzer is in charge of providing us this information. Top product analyzer is the agent in charge of giving us this information. The events analyzer is the agent in charge of giving us this information for the events. And then the summarizer, or the one that distills all of it, is in charge of giving us this entire thing, right? Now, if we head on back here, we can see that we are doing, we start with the data collector, which just gets information about what store I'm logged into, right? And then we have that fan out. I think we have, do we have the DevUI open here? Yes. Let me actually switch this to right here. If we look at our weekly insights, we see we start with our data collector, get information in the store. And because when you think about this project, and let's go back to those different types of workflows that I mentioned, it isn't dependent like the top selling products, that insight come to the events analyzer, to the winner analyzer. So this is a good use case to use something where we are running these concurrently, right? So we kick everything off. We give the information that each one of these executors, each one of these agents needs, and they can go and run at the same time. And I don't have to wait for like weathers and events. They don't necessarily depend on each other. And then my synthesizer will collect everything. So fan in and then give us the information, right? So if we go back here, that's exactly what we are defining here. We have our fan out, which our data collector fans out to our weather, our events, our top selling, and then fans back in, collects everything, and generates that insights for us, right? Now, another thing that's very relevant here is to take a look at let's look at our top selling product, right? This is essentially our agent. Well, actually a little bit more. It's a little bit more code here, but here what we're saying is, okay, I want a chat agent, right? And we're providing here the instructions. You are a retail analyst analyzing product performance, retrieve the top 5 selling products, right? Just relevant information here. And as a tool, we are sending the finance MCP. So instead of us creating the functionality in here, adding all that code, we just created a finance MCP because other functionality, other agents can leverage this as well. And then we're sending it to this chat agent like, hey, you have these tools. I need you to get this task done. go ahead and do that for us, right? And just for that, I'll just pop open our finance over here. And this is connecting to a database that will go ahead and run SQL queries, get relevant information that it needs to answer the question, right? And each one of these functionalities would end up being a tool. I'll show you. So anything that's decorated with a tool means that is something that an agent can leverage to get information, to get results, to get answers from, right? So for example, get company order policy. We also have get supplier contract, get historical sales data, get top selling products, right? Now, another thing to keep in mind here is, for example, in our insights, I'm not telling it specifically which tools to use. I'm just saying it has the entirety of finance MCP. And if you are really good at prompting, and you're quite explicit, from what you are providing as instructions, it will know which tools to go and pick, right? And that's why we see the relevant information here on our homepage. Okay, right, these are all relevant to this stuff. And the last thing that I think is pretty cool here that I want to show you before I show you the batch stuff is we are also leveraging external tools, right? So we can use internal MCP servers that interact with our information, our data, which is great. But we can also have let me take a look here at our context. Let me look at our weather. We have a weather analyzer that should go stock. Oh no, we're in the wrong one. We're in insights. Here we go. We should have a weather. All right, I'm just going to search for it. Weather analyzer, or is it? Here we go. And here, what we are doing is simply calling an API. We're calling Open Media, which working with this API was awesome. So highly recommend. And the cool thing here is we are providing a structured output. That way we can sort of be strict with what we expect, and instead of having just random text or random JSON returned to us. And yeah, we're just calling an API here. We're providing the proper parameters that the API expects, similar to just working with normal code and APIs. Same exact thing here. But once we get that information from the API, we send it to an LLM to give us the proper insights for the weather that we want for the city, right? That's this part here. What else I want to show you? Okay, cool. So that's a little bit about how we would sort of generate this. And then if we were to log into a different store, this would look different depending on that store. And the other really cool functionality that we have here is we have this, if you click on, well, we can click on inventory, or we can use this button here that says generate insights based analysis, which will take all those insights. I click on this. And we have an agent that is specific to inventory, to stocking things, right? And the instructions for the agent is all those insights that we just got, right? We've got the weather, we've got the top selling products. And essentially what we want to do is, hey, we need to restock product, use these insights to go and make a smart decision on what to stock, right? Now, I don't want to kick this off right now because it's probably not going to be done by the time, but I did run it before, but I ran it just from, if we go back to the dashboard, I ran it from, I think there's like an inventory, inventory here. And this, what you would expect from an inventory dashboard, what's low, what we can stock up on, right? But then we also have this launch AI agent here, and it has some pre-filled instructions. So that's what I ran here, right? So you see I kicked it off at 11:32, which was about 20 minutes ago. And it took about 4-ish or so minutes to go and complete this for us. And it tells us here we should restock on peacoat, wool blend, outerwear, a couple of other things here. And it tells us current stock and 10. And I'm assuming this, or did it tell us here? The key highlight is the peacoat wool blend, which is completely out of stock, indicating a need for immediate replenishment. Other items, while not critically low, have limited stock levels and should also be monitored for potential restocking to maintain optimal inventory. Let's just try running this. I hope it runs quick, but if it doesn't, I won't. right? But while this is running so in the background, I do want to show you a little bit of the code for Restocking, because this is what's doing like bulk processing or batch processing, I should say. The key here is we have this collection. So the first step is to call the MCP and get information, relevant information based on the store and all that kind of stuff. And instead of having it go to the MCP server, find one, then calling an LLM, we're batching everything into this collection here. So that way we just make one call to an LLM versus making various calls, which is also why it takes a few minutes to go and collect all the information it needs, all the products that potentially need to be restocked based on that insights that I've provided it. And it kind of runs, I think we can expand this. Yeah, it kind of runs in the background there. It looks like it's kicked off already. And then if we look at our console, we should probably see some stuff coming in here too. We'll stick this to our API. Yeah, so things are running here. It's going and making the calls as well. If I look at our traces here, yeah, we have a couple things kicked off as well here for our MCP servers. I hope that actually it might, okay, wait, no, was this the one I already did or was this the new? Okay, no, that looks like the new one. Awesome, let's see. So it says here, several AutoWare products are available in sufficient quantities, which may not require restocking at this time. And it's selling us combat boots, work boot, steel toe. What else? Oh, a sports jacket, a rain jacket. And this is different than, yeah, it's different than these, right? So this one looks more like just products that need to be restocked versus this one is more specific to the weather insights, I'm assuming. And I guess the loafer slip-ons is because it had the event of the New Year's Eve thing. But yeah, anyway, so many things that you can get done with a variety of workflows. I will also share their GitHub repo here at some point because I know people will probably be asking. And I did want to leave a couple of minutes to just answer what questions that we had. So if we could just switch to Q&A, that'd be awesome. Would be, yes, people are asking for, let me find the repo. Give me one sec.
Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to type in the chat. Otherwise, I'd be answering them that way.
No worries. I'll find it. Do we have any other?
So there's a couple questions. So I'm not sure how to bring it up on the screen, but there's one that says, is it okay to say that these are customized workflows that yeah, exactly. Customized workflows that we build as models and leverage the VM or EC2 instances where we will be executing these workflows. Yeah, absolutely. So you can run these, and I assume you're talking about, just in general, like the blueprints or the agent framework workflows. Yeah, you can run these on a VM. You can run them on Kubernetes. For the blueprints, they're sort of like reference architectures that are meant to be really flexible and customizable. So some of them come pre-packaged as Helm charts where you can just install them and run them on Kubernetes. But if you want to see the source code and turn it into more of a monolith where you run it on, let's say, a single VM, that could absolutely work too. So there's lots of flexibility there. So yeah, absolutely.
I just shared the GitHub repo. You paste it in the perfect.
Awesome.
Let's see, any other? So are we triggering the events based on the functionality, broken down the functions into small workflows? We are triggering the events based on the broken down the functions into small workflows. Yeah, you could think of it as each agent should be specific, and then your workflow could also be somewhat specific, but you could have various tasks, right? So for example, for generating the insights, it is like a specific task, like generate insights, but inside of that, we have specialized agents that are going to get the weather, going to get the top products, going to get the, I already forgot, the event, popular events, right? So it is all functionality that is quite cohesive, and versus if you find things being completely random, they might make more sense in a different workflow, or you might need to rethink that architecture.
There was
I
another
think we're
question.
about time. We can do one more.
Okay, sorry, I'll do one more. I'll fit it in.
Yeah.
This is an alternate solution to model tuning in Azure Foundry, or could we leverage these solutions in Azure Foundry also? Yeah, so good question. So for the model tuning in Azure Foundry, Microsoft Foundry now, the model tuning, yeah, is a great way to like fine tune your model and sort of customize it for your specific workflow. And with that, you can create the endpoint to interact with your model, and you can essentially plug that endpoint into your application. So let's say that back to that financial, distillation endpoint, or sorry, financial data distillation blueprint. If I wanted to host all of the models except one locally, I could do that. And then that one model that's fine tuned and hosted in Azure, Microsoft Foundry, that could be hosted there. And I just interact with it through the endpoint that's exposed from Microsoft Foundry. So that could absolutely work. Yes. It's a bit more complex that way. So technically, yes, but I would recommend trying to keep it as simple as possible.
Awesome. And, that's it. But the good news is we have other episodes. People can come join, ask plenty more questions there as well, right, Stephen?
Absolutely. Yes, we have 2 more sessions of this episode. So feel free to join and ask your questions there if we couldn't get to them today.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. And thanks everyone for hanging out here. And I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, team.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series.